Okay, hi there. Right, today's little task is to join these two halves together. And they were both fabricated independently of each other and at completely separate times. So the chances of that joint being absolutely perfect are practically nil. And one of the things I'd like to do in the future, as I've said many times, is I would like to elevate myself as in a skill set into TIG welding, and I will be doing that. I have a friend who lives very nearby who has promised over and over again to teach me TIG welding, and I will take you up on that, my friend, because I do want to learn TIG. But I've got to get the right machine, and I have to save up for that, and that will come. The little thing I've got is no use. I've got to have a proper machine for that, and I will get one. And then I can move away from doing things like that, which work perfectly fine and will serve the job, but I'll be able to make a lovely TIG weld instead. Welds that perhaps in the future I can leave exposed and just paint, and that would be fantastic because I want to get into frame building in the future and exhaust building. Because if I can make exhaust systems out of bends and curves, then that's awesome. The sky's the limit, and there's so many things I want to do, but it's the skills to do it, and that's what I'm in the process of trying to develop, and that's what the purpose of this bike build is. What this bike ends up looking like is less important than what I learned from it, and I've already learned so much. And one of those things is what I'm about to do today, and that's getting the joint right. If you're going to do TIG welding, one of the issues with all of it is that the joint between two pieces of metal needs to be practically perfect, almost airtight, because with TIG welding, it's less about filling the joint with metal and more about melting the two halves of the joint into each other. So if you're going to melt them into each other, they need to touch all the way along. So that's the point. TIG welding takes so much longer as an overall process because getting the joint right, getting the notch in that joint, the two pieces of metal to be absolutely perfect all the way around is the task and the time consuming part. And there are ways to do it quicker to make it a little bit easier, and that's what I want to just show you very quickly. I learned this from a TIG weld guy, so it's a really easy way to do it, especially with exhaust pipes or curves on frames, that sort of thing. And that is this. If I want to get that joint so the two halves not only meet the correct curvature, so they don't end up like that or like that, even a fraction will show once it's welded. So they've got to be absolutely a smooth curve so that when it's all ground back, it's completely flawless and you can't see where they're joined. That's what I'm looking to aim for. So in order to do that, you can spend ages with one of these, touching the joint here and there, keep offering it up until they're the same, but you're never going to get them exactly the same. This is what I learned, and it's so easy. All you do, you take one, put it over the other. So do it this way. If you stretch one of them over the top of the other like that, as close as you can, then use this one as a rule and draw on this, but using that up against. So you literally trace the track of this part onto this part, making a template. Take that off and you've got a line to cut. Now I don't want to lose any overall length on this, well none to speak of, but I'm going to only probably do a centimetre at the most, sort of 10 mil, half inch, that's all I'll lose. And it's not a bad thing either, because that edge is perfect-ish, and that edge has got a little notch in it where the weld blew through and I ground it back. So that's sacrificial. So I'll come 10mm up there, draw a line, and that will give me it. But before I do that, I've got to make sure that the line I draw is in the right place. So to do that, I've got to put it on the wheel, and I've got to space it above the wheel so that as I draw around it, it follows the exact line it's going to follow. Then when it's cut, it should mate up absolutely perfectly, in theory. So I'll show you how we space it on the tyre exactly right. Obviously, you need to make sure that the gap all the way round is the same, and a minimum of, in this case, 12mm. Now I like at least 12mm, you know, ½ inch between the tyre and the mudguard, especially a steel mudguard, because obviously what you have to consider is stones getting underneath there. So if that mudguard is too close to the tyre, then if a stone gets up underneath, it's going to jam against the mudguard or fender, and it's going to then roll and gore lumps out of the rubber, which is pretty nasty and could even cause a puncture. So if you're going to put it on the tyre like that and measure where you want it to be and cut, then there's a tip for you. Little piece of rubber tubing, little fuel hose I've used, tape it along, and that ensures an even gap all the way around. Make sure that the donor part is equally spaced. If it's a wider mudguard on a wider wheel, then use 2 pieces side by side and run them round, and then you'll get an exact gap all the way around, and it will also keep the mudguard centered as well in terms of the lateral ellipse, if you want the posh word. So that's a little tip for you. Make sure you always space it. If you don't, it's going to end up too close in one place, not far enough away in another, so on, and you end up with problems later on. Once you've welded it, then you've got all the other stuff to remedy. So there we are. Here we are, exact template. Let's cut it off. There we go, perfect joint. One follows the other exactly, ready to weld. Ain't odd, is it? Right, so this is where we are now. Weld the sides first, and then I've got that curvature absolutely correct and strong. Good little stack of tack welds on the inside to get it just nice and beef. And then that left a bit more of a loop on this back half than that half. This is a bit flatter across the top than that is, but that's easy to remedy. All you got to do, as that comes up at the back, as this loops upwards, you can't just hammer that down in, because what will happen is you'll end up with, this will come along, then there'll be a step in it, and it will look ugly, and when you try and grind that off, you'll go through, because it's only sheet metal. So all you do is cut a little slit in it, like that, and that slit then comes together, allowing that to rest down. So all I do, I've done that side, as you can see. Take your little toffee hammer, and you just tap that side down into that, then meets it. And this one, as you can see, then you just tap that down in. So as this one at the back was more like this, that's exaggerating it. All I've done is cut a slit there, and then when you hammer them down, the slit comes together and you just weld it up. So it's just making it up as you go along. And it's no different if you're making fuel tanks, which is what I would like to get to do in the future once I can TIG them. But this is about getting the metal shaped correctly so there's the least amount of grinding later on and the most amount of strength. Right, there we go. Okay, now I've learned, if you're going to do fabrication, you'll learn very quickly, because I've learned never to bite off more than you can chew. I came in here this morning intending to quickly weld that across, remove the rubber tubing, and then start looking into the side mounts I'm going to do to put this onto the bike. But there we are, 4 hours later, all I've done is weld that joint across. But that turned out to be quite a challenge. It needed a three-way cut to get it to fit, because they were different elliptical shapes, as well as getting the actual line right. So there's lots to it. But fabrication is enormous good fun. It's a great way to express yourself, and I absolutely love it. It's my single favourite pastime. I think I've said that before, once or twice. So there we are, that's it. I've now at least got it in one mudguard. And now I've got the option, I can mount it practically anywhere. I kind of thinking it does need a little bit of elevation at the back. That one of you guys pointed out, bumping off a curb, it would just touch on it and that would do quite a bit of damage. So I'm just going to lift it a little bit, which gives me a bit more at the front, which is nice. That's what I wanted. It's straight, it hasn't twisted in any way, which is important, so there's no distortion to it, and it follows the line still. It's a little bit higher than it was when I first put it on, but it cannot be any lower than this. As I said, has to have that 12mm of half-inch gap, otherwise stones can get caught up under there, and so on and so forth. So there we are. So these, as I said to you, I think the last one, we're going to leave them naked now. I like the forks as they are. I did originally intend for this to be just matte black and a bit of a rat bike, but Street Fighter, you know, the sort of thing. But that's where the rubber tubes came from. Chucked them out now. But slicing them off, I like to see the forks there. They still look beefy enough on the bike. I still think they work for me. So they'll stay like that now. They do need to be refurbished a little. There's a few chips and scratches, which is one of the other reasons I didn't bother covering them up. There we are. So the pipe lagging, as you call it, is gone. I'm not going to use that anymore. It gives me more space here for the mudguards, which is great. I may have to just notch these out a little bit. What I may do, where there's about 3mm either side between the mudguard and the fork legs, and I don't think that's enough. I want about 5mm, so I may notch these very slightly, but I've got to know where that notch is going to be. So that's in the next video when I get involved in mounts, which have got to go onto here and here. I've got mounts at the front. There's lots of options. I might do something with tubes and bars. I might do something with sheet. I don't know. I still can't decide, so I'm not going to get involved. Like I said, you always end up biting off more than you can chew. I plan to do loads more, and all I've done is one weld, but that took 4 hours. That's just the way it goes. Don't rush it. Any project should be broken down into loads of mini projects, and look at each job in its entirety as a specific set project all on its own, and you'll always make a better job of it. That's what I think anyway, so that works for me. So there we are. That's it. Join us tomorrow for the prize job. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. Ride safe. See you next time.